All right, you've been watching President Donald Trump speak at the World Economic Forum in Davos. President Trump began the speech by touting his achievements over the past year. He took shots at other European countries, saying their economies are all moving in the wrong direction.
He spoke a lot about the domestic economy here in the U.S. He blamed former President Biden for causing inflation, a wide trade deficit, and record migration. He talked about removing government jobs from the federal budget and cutting regulations. It sounded a bit like a campaign speech.
It did. It sounded like a campaign speech. It sounded like a list of grievances that the president had with other countries, with other world leaders, calling some of them out by name, including the president of France, Emmanuel Macron, the Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney. Within all of that, he pivoted, obviously, to the one issue that has been driving a lot of the discussion in the last couple of days, which is Greenland, saying that the United States needs Greenland for national security. The news that was sort of made, if you want to call it that, is he said that he would not be using force. He wants negotiations to acquire Greenland, though, to begin immediately. So let's bring in CBS News senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe, who is live in Davos right now. He is traveling with the president. So, Ed, give me your sense of the key takeaways. What do you think will be driving the news cycle over the next couple of hours, over the next couple of days, based on this speech? I can tell you the stock market, after having a terrible, terrible day yesterday, based off some of the comments that the president was making around tariffs, specifically a potential trade war with Europe, seems to be settling a bit this morning.
And if it is, it's because perhaps the part of this speech that gives at least some relief to the world is he says he doesn't intend to use U.S. military force to take the island, but he insisted he will proceed with attempts to negotiate with Denmark for possession of Greenland, insisting it's a U.S. national security priority. It's in the Western Hemisphere, and the United States wants it back, in essence, for protecting it during World War II. My concern, though, guys, quite honestly, is that he very well may be taking some more detailed questions on why he's doing this, and I would urge us to perhaps listen into what he may be saying here, because the clarity that Europe is seeking in terms of what would those negotiations look like, how serious is he really about them? Is he negotiating directly with Denmark? Is this something with NATO? All of that is going to matter here in the next few hours as we wait to hear what leaders across this continent make of what he said. So perhaps we should go back and listen at least a little bit to what he's saying.
Yeah, Ed, stand by. We're going to go back to the president, who is now, as Ed indicated, doing a Q&A with the organizers. Let's listen.
And having intelligent people on the other side, because wars are the worst of all. Wars are worse than anything. But we can stop wars because that's sort of up to us. But things like dust flying in the air, wherever COVID comes from or whatever comes, sometimes you have to be a little bit lucky. But we are poised to have an economy like no other, not only in this country, but anywhere. And you know, when you hear the kind of numbers that I can tell you that Scott Bessent was with me the other day, and he's looking at numbers. He said, I can't. And that's all he's done his whole life, pretty much your whole life. Scott, you weren't going to be a football player, I don't think. Scott was not that great at football, but he was always good at numbers, right? And he was looking at numbers. He said, I've never seen anything like this. We're poised to do things that no other country's ever done. And, you know, luck, I hate to say it, but we need a little luck. We don't want to get hit by something that nobody could have thought. Whoever thought we were going to hit by a pandemic? You know, when I heard the word pandemic, I said, oh, that's an ancient problem. World War I, they lost 100 million people. It actually ended World War I. A lot of people don't know. The Spanish flu in World War I ended the war because all the soldiers were sick. The soldiers were so sick on both sides, and that war was raging, and they were all dying from the Spanish flu. They were sick as dogs. They couldn't fight. So, you know, you don't know how that would have turned out. But so we do, I mean, subject to that, and I always have to put a caveat in for it, but we're poised to have the greatest growth of any large country, I think any country that there's been. When you look at what's happening in the United States, it's really amazing.
Thank you. One thing that maybe keeps you up at night, I know you don't sleep that much anyway, Mr. President, is the debt. The U.S. debt is high, is now the biggest expenditure on your budget. How to get out of that impasse?
Well, the big thing is growth. I mean, growth is the way. If we grow like this, we go from having at 37 trillion dollars. We go from having high debt to low debt. But we also are cutting expenses, you know, the old-fashioned way. We have extraordinary growth. I think we're going to be growing our way out. I think we're going to be paying off debt. We're taking in tremendous money from tariffs fairly. And again, I'm using them judiciously. You know, Switzerland's a case study. I could have gotten much more. I could have asked for much more. But we're using them judiciously. But I think growth, most importantly, and then cutting costs. Now, if you take a look at Minnesota, $19 billion in fraud and other things. People going to airports, they came into the country, they don't have 10 cents, and they're leaving with hundreds of thousands of cash in their bags. When we get to that, and our DOJ, Pam, and Todd, and all the people that work over there, and all of the people that work in here, I can tell you, Scott Bessent is working on that. It's a priority, right? You have your whole team. We're in there looking for where this money is coming from, how much it is. It could be more than $19 billion. Can you believe that? That's just one state. If we were able to cut out 50% of the fraud, 50%, and we should be able to do better than that, we would have a balanced budget without having to talk about even growth. So we have a lot of options, but we're working very hard on that. That's a big deal. It's not just the protests, the fake protests done by agitators and, you know, professional insurrectionists. That's what they are. They're professional troublemakers. But we are looking very strong at the money, too, in Minnesota and other places.
I think, Mr. President, also the $500 billion invested in artificial intelligence and the frontier technologies last year also were driving growth exponentially in the U.S.
Well, AI has been a big factor. AI is massive. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg showed me a plant where he put it over a map of Manhattan, and it was basically the size of Manhattan. This is not, I said, you got to be kidding. It's a plant that was miles long, miles wide, very high. I don't think it was high like the Empire State Building, but it was high. And it literally covered most of the island of Manhattan. That's called a big plant. And, you know, when I heard they're going to spend $50 billion building it, I said, you know, if you spend $50 million, you can build a nice little shopping center. If you spend $500 million, you can build a good shopping center. But how do you spend $50 billion? When I looked at this thing, I said, you think you'll be able to do it for that? It's amazing when, you know, some of the plants that I see, and I see them all. And again, so big is we're letting them build their own electric generation. This way we have no problem. And otherwise they'd be complaining. There'd be nobody able to, you know, we have an old grid system. And not only that, they're going to sell at a very cheap price the excess electricity that they create back into our grid. So that'll solve some problems for certain states that don't have enough electricity.
We also know that on the AI, there is fierce competition between the US as the largest economy in the world, 27% of the global GDP and 5% of the global population, not doing that badly, and China. And we know that that competition is very tough on AI. I know you're heading to a state visit to China in April. How do you see the US-China relationship moving forward? Are you able to combine this tough competition with also collaboration?
So I've always had a very good relationship with President Xi and with President Putin. Talk about, you know, the larger powers. But I've always had a very good relationship with President Xi of China. He's an incredible man. What he's done is amazing. He's highly respected by everybody. And I do now. I mean, now I have good. It was very severely interrupted by COVID. I used to call it the China virus, but he said, do you think you could use a different name? And I decided to do that because why should we have a problem over that? But I would do that, and they were.
You're a true diplomat, huh?
I became a diplomat for the first time. Well, you know who taught me that? Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio. He said, let me teach you about diplomacy. Hey, any guy that gets approved by 100% of the votes, think of it, he got liberal Democrats and radical right Republicans to approve him. He's the only one. The next one was like lost 45 votes, right? But he got all 100 votes voting for him. And at first I wasn't happy about it. I said, wait a minute, I don't like that. And now it turns out that the Democrats probably wish they didn't do that. And Marco has been fantastic. Marco, stand up, please. You have done a great job as Secretary of State. He's going to go down as the best Secretary of State. And Scott, and we have Susie, who's the first female Chief of Staff, and she's the best Chief of Staff, too. And I see Howard Lutnick, who I know spoke, and Howard's fantastic. Some of the deals we're doing are great. And I want to pay particular attention because we have Chris. And Chris, you got up and spoke, I think. He's the #1 oil man in the world, because I was going to put Doug Burgum, who's fantastic. I don't know if Doug's here. Is Doug here? Doug Burgum is fantastic. He said, sir, there's one man better than me. And he introduced me to Chris, and he turns out to be. So we're drilling more oil and gas now than we ever have by almost double. Is that right, Chris? And on top of it, we got a lot coming out of Venezuela. So anyway, so we're doing great. The country is just doing great. We have great people. Thank you. And I see other people. We have Steve Witkoff. We have Jared. I got so many people. I'm in trouble because when I go back, they're going to be people with long faces. Sir, you didn't introduce me. I got so many people. And we have a lot of the greatest people anywhere in the world. I know them all. So I won't continue because we'd be here all day.
Thank you, Mr. President. We also know that you're a deal maker, and then maybe coming back to Greenland and Ukraine. What kind of deal in the end do you see between the U.S. And Denmark? Because, you know, I guess you see it now as a negotiation going on, or?
Well, it's costing Denmark hundreds of millions a year to run it. And Denmark's a small country and wonderful people. But, you know, it's very expensive. It's a very big piece of ice. And it's very important. I mean, I don't want to repeat the speech, but it's very important that we use that for national and international security. That can create a power that will make it impossible for the bad guys to do anything against the perceived good ones. And it's a great block for Europe, just like, you know, Denmark was supposed to spend hundreds of millions of dollars. They didn't spend the money. They didn't spend anything almost. And we'll see what happens. I just say this. NATO has treated the United States of America very unfairly. We never asked for anything. We never got anything. We actually took care of the needs of NATO for years and years, which I felt was always unfair. So I got NATO to pay because they're rich countries. But I think it's time that NATO step up. We're helping them with Ukraine. Without us, I think Putin would have gone all the way. I think we have it. I think there could have been a World War III, if you want to know the truth. If Kamala was elected, or Joe, any one of those, you know, those thinkers, I think you could have ended up in World War III. And I will say Steve Witkoff has been dealing incredibly with, but we're not going to have World War III. We want to get it stopped, but we're not going to have World War III. I think if I wasn't elected, I think that could have evolved into World War III. It was a very, very bad situation. And it still is, but it's not that kind of bad. It's bad because so many young people are being killed.
How close do you think there is on an agreement on Ukraine? I had the pleasure of speaking with Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner yesterday. I know they're working hard on it. I know that they're also traveling now. Do you see this very close or still?
Well, I hate to say it. I thought that was going to be so. I settled 8 wars plus. And I thought that was going to be one of my easier ones. Not the easiest. Some I settled in a matter of hours because I'm good at that stuff. You know, the United Nations should be doing this. I shouldn't be doing it, but it doesn't matter. It's got to get done, saving a lot of lives. We're saving millions of lives. With Ukraine, Russia, there's tremendous hatred between President Zelensky and President Putin. That's not good. That's not good for settlements. We know from dealing. There's abnormal hatred. With that being said, I think Russia wants to make a deal. I think Ukraine wants to make a deal. And we're going to try getting a deal done. We're getting, I think, Steve, I think I can say that we're reasonably close. But what happens is oftentimes we'll have a deal with Russia. Russia's set, and President Zelensky will not do it. You saw that when he was in the Oval Office. I was not happy. And then we'll have President Zelensky who wants to make a deal, and Putin doesn't want to make the deal. It's a very difficult balance, and it's big time, and it is, you know, to use a word, it's a bloodbath. It's horrible what's happening. It's a drone war. The drones are killing, you know, thousands of people a week, thousands. We have to get it stopped. So I believe they're at a point now. I'm going to meet with President Zelensky later today. I believe they're at a point now where they can come together and get a deal done. And if they don't, they're stupid. That goes for both of them. And I know they're not stupid. But if they don't get this done, they are stupid. So I don't want to insult anyone, but you got to get this deal done. Too many people are dying. It's not worth it.
President Sisi is sitting on the first row here. He spoke earlier today and also complimented you on the Gaza deal. I think there will be a signing tomorrow. Of course, there are different views on this, but how important do you think this signing is on the board of peace? And do you think this is going to sustain? Do you think we now will see Gaza reconstructed and the billions of US dollars invested?
I do. I mean, I think we have peace in the Middle East. There are some little situations like Hamas, and Hamas has agreed to give up their weapons. Now, you know, they were born with a weapon in their hand, so it's not easy to do. When they were born with a rifle in their hand. It's not an easy thing for them, but that's what they agreed to. They've got to do it. And we're going to know, Jared, over the next 2 or 3 days, certainly over the next 3 weeks, whether or not they're going to do it. If they don't do it, they'll be blown away very quickly. They'll be blown away. You know, we have 59 countries that are part of that whole peace deal. And some of those countries aren't even they're near the Middle East, but they're not in the Middle East traditionally. And they want to come in and take out Hamas. They want to come in. They want to do whatever they can. There's a problem with Hezbollah in Lebanon, and we'll see what happens there, but that's a problem. But there are these little flames, but there's peace in the Middle East. Now, had we not gone in and knocked out with those big, beautiful, we just ordered 25 brand new ones, the latest and the greatest, the B-2 bomber. Think of them, they went in there at 2 o'clock in the morning with no moon, no light, no nothing, and every single one of those massive bombs hit its target, 100,000-pound bombs hit its target, every one of them. And then on top of it, from a submarine 300 miles away, we hit the sites with tomahawks, which is an unbelievable weapon. So, you know, we did our job. If we didn't do that, you would have never had peace in the Middle East. And the countries like Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Qatar could never have, and others could never have signed anything because you would have had this dark cloud, and the dark cloud was Iran with nuclear. Iran would, if we didn't take them out, they would have had a nuclear weapon within 2 months. They were very close to having the nuclear weapon, and we hit them hard. And it was a total obliteration. If they may try again, but they're going to have to try from a different area because that area was obliterated. Incredible thing we did. And because we did that, we were able to make peace. If we didn't do that, I would say, Jared and Steve, if we didn't do that, there was no chance of making peace because the countries I just named and other countries could have never signed off. They were afraid. They were afraid. We had a bully. The bully was Iran, the bully of the Middle East. They used to call it for years. They were the bully of the Middle East. They're not the bully of the Middle East anymore.
Mr. President, I know you even had to...
We want to bring in Ed O'Keefe one more time from Davos. We've been listening into the president addressing the World Economic Forum and taking questions from the leader of that forum. Ed, you know, the president has been throughout the morning, he's been speaking, he's been on the stage for more than an hour, really doing some victory laps, talking about American victories with recent strikes against Iran's nuclear program all the way back to World War II. But the headline that has been gaining some traction is him saying that the U.S. would not use force in Greenland. The quote is, "I don't want to use force. I won't use force." What's your take?
That will come as a relief to many on this side of the world, Adriana, but the idea that he's pressing ahead with trying to take control of Greenland is going to be a great frustration and likely the subject of great debate among Europe's top leaders in the coming hours. We're going to have to monitor closely for what they may now say. Removing military threats is one thing, but if he persists and insists on some kind of negotiation, we'll wait and see. The Europeans will remind the president of a few things. There is an existing agreement that would allow the United States to expand its military presence in Greenland should it want to. He has the right to do that based on this agreement that's been in place for decades. So perhaps ultimately that's where we end up, that they sort of take that existing agreement, update it a little bit, and go from there. Should he really push for this total acquisition, however, he's going to face resistance from just about everyone else in the world, because he's violating the sovereignty of a territory that wants nothing to do with the United States in terms of control, prefers to be with Denmark, or, frankly, there's a movement in Greenland that would prefer to be independent altogether. We'll see. And important that the White House is now saying this is solely or primarily based on concerns with national security, the risk that Chinese and Russian vessels come through the Arctic to the other side of the world, that they may ultimately come up with some longer-term interests and pursuits up there in the northern reaches of the globe, is what concerns the president, that this has nothing to do with mineral extraction, with oil exploration and whatnot. So we'll watch again for the rest of the day here what these other leaders have to say. And he also made some news there suggesting he has a meeting later today with Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky, obviously another top global concern, especially in this part of the world, and is expected tomorrow to lay out more details of the Gaza peace plan and this board of peace that he's establishing with other partner nations. We don't entirely have a full accounting yet of who's involved in that. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu this morning saying he will be. Others have said as well. We'll learn more about that. So lots to watch for throughout the rest of today.
I'm sure that who the president called one of the greatest secretaries of state of all time, Marco Rubio, will be doing a lot of chin wagging with some of those counterparts there. And I know you got to run. But I'm guessing, Thomas Jefferson, Dean Acheson, James Baker, who else?
Henry Kissinger.
Henry Kissinger, John Adams. No, it's Marco Rubio that is the greatest in
He does
history.
have multiple jobs.
He does have multiple
He's a
jobs.
busy man.
Ed O'Keefe for us in Davos. Ed, thank you, my friend. We'll check in with you a little later. So now let us continue this discussion with CBS News foreign correspondent Ramy Inocencio, who's joining us from our London newsroom. So I guess the question will be, Ramy, and we were sort of just lightheartedly joking about Marco Rubio because he is going to have a difficult hedge to row in talking to some of his counterparts because even though the president did make news, and if you go online and you look at all the newspapers, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, Axios, Politico, the headline is Trump says that he will not try to acquire Greenland by force. So that is a sigh of relief, perhaps, but he is still after it. And so how do you think Europe's leaders are going to view this speech? The notion, Ramy, and I don't want to answer for you, but to me, what struck me is the repeated language around World War II, which is, reminding Europe's leaders that if, the United States had not been a staunch ally during World War II, that Europeans would be speaking German and Japanese, which I know is probably not going to go over well in some of those capitals.
Apparently there were groans heard in the room when he said that, Yeah,
to answer your question, I think skepticism is how his comments will be received across Europe. Just yesterday, the Prime Minister of Greenland issued a warning saying that while he doesn't think that there will be a military escalation in Greenland, he did say that they have to prep for that possibility. He said that everyone needs to prep 5 days of food and supplies. And while President Trump did make that headline saying that he will not use the military to try to take Greenland, skepticism. We know that President Trump has had a track record of saying one thing, potentially doing one thing, and then changing his mind, from tariffs on countries around the world, on the issue of Russia and Ukraine. So what could stop President Trump from changing his mind immediately after saying that he will not use military force to take Greenland here? I think a lot of other people will take into account the fact that he was putting down, as you said, NATO. NATO was helpful through World War II. Denmark itself had one of the highest fatality rates after 9/11, was one of the first countries to send U.S. troops to the war on terror after 9/11, Afghanistan and Iraq. And, I've been talking to war veterans. They say they're so just dismayed at a U.S. military that had been fighting by their side, but now that potentially is training their sights on Greenland, on Denmark, and in some way political, military, economic, on the rest of NATO. Earlier today, I spoke to Anders Fogh Rasmussen. He's not just Denmark's former prime minister. He's also the former Secretary General for NATO himself. For Denmark, he told me also it's betrayal. Danes, they fought and died with U.S. troops. But then he said for NATO and the world, he said this is a catastrophe. You know, we heard Ursula von der Leyen yesterday, the European Commission president, saying that the current world order is behind us and that something new will have to happen, all because of Donald Trump breaking apart this old world order from World War II. We have some sound that I want to play on this. Go ahead.
It's a painful process. Since childhood, I have admired the United States. As Prime Minister and Secretary General of NATO, I work closely with American presidents. I've always considered the U.S. a natural leader of the free world. But now everything has changed, so it's really painful.
Greenland's Prime Minister, Jens Frederik Nielsen, just warned his people to prep for a possible U.S. invasion. Is this being overly dramatic or perhaps scarily realistic?
Greenlanders do not want to become Americans. Greenland is not for sale, so the only possibility for the U.S. would be a hostile military action against Greenland, which would mark the end of NATO and the end of the world order as we know it. And the only winners would be Putin and Xi Jinping. People all over the world have seen the United States as a shining city on the hill. And now this is gradually eroding.
Yeah, and he felt a little sad there, too. He said he regrets that erosion that he said, and he pled to Congress. He's pleading to Congress, he said, that the American people need to correct the course of the American president, guys.
All right, Ramy, thank you so much for that new reporting and that interview.